Hello and welcome to Politics Today. I'm Farooq Bitafi. Once again, we are going to talk about the very same thing that we discussed last time in this program, Maulana Fazlur Rahman's Azadi March. At that time, when we did the last show, the name of the march was not decided, the date was not decided, the modus operandi was not decided. Now, out of three, we know of two things. One, it is going to be called Azadi March, resonating with PTI's own Azadi March. And then it is planned to take off on 27th of this very month. Whether Maulana Fazlur Rahman is going to come here or not still remains a question that needs an answer. But we know that the opposition parties seem to be dilly-dallying. PMLN, People's Party, both claim that they are going to extend moral support. We don't know what exactly does that mean, but moral support, not any physical support. Today we are going to talk about all these matters and more, and there are many questions that need to be asked. Today we are going to answer them. In order to help us understand these issues, we are joined by a very eminent panel, one journalist, one political economist, and one barrister, come politician and PhD as well. Javed Jadoon Saab, senior journalist, thank you very much for being part of the program. Next to him is Dr. Niaz Murza, a political economist, also a columnist of renown. Thank you very much for being part of the program. Next to him is Barrister Mohammad Ali Saif Saab, senator of MQM, but he is much, much more than that. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Barrister Saif, I have to start with you. And I have to ask you, do you think Maulana Fazlur Rahman is going to come?
Yeah, I believe insofar as his statements are concerned, he has made it quite clear and he's quite adamant, showing a lot of commitment, expressing it in his various press conferences and press briefings that he has decided to march on Islamabad. And I believe that now backing off on his statements would be politically damaging, rather suicidal for him. So therefore, I personally think that his march on Islamabad on the 27th of October, I think that should be considered as something which is going to happen,
Right.
and it should not be taken as just a mere bluff at this stage.
It might not be a bluff, but here's the question. In the past, we have seen many marches of similar kind. PTI, Tadrul Qadri, one more of TLP as well. Since then, it seems that Islamabad, the city, hasn't learned how to actually protect itself against such marches. Why do you think it is so?
Well, you see, this learning how to protect yourself is basically something that when you analyze this particular issue in a political context, I believe that people don't learn. I mean, all over the world, if you look at the history of these marches, even in cities like Paris and other European capitals, even in now in Hong Kong. I mean, this is now a modus operandi of basically political movements,
Right.
and it goes with with political what you call it agitational politics that it becomes a basic component of political movements. And I think personally that marching or bringing people in thousands to a particular city or expressing a certain aggressive design against your political opponents is not a bad thing in politics.
It might not be, sir, but disrupting life,
Yes, that
especially
is
mine
something.
and yours,
Yeah,
becomes quite a problem.
but that is an issue for the governance of of a country and for the government. So therefore, I
Right.
mean, these are two different things. Yeah.
Right. Dr. Niaz Murza, do you agree with Barrister, sir?
Well, I think if you look at the recent dharnas that we've had, one by Tahir al-Qadri, one by Pat and PTI together,
two actually.
and then by Labak, I don't remember any of them giving such a harsh and emphatic ultimatum. It was usually about, okay, so Labak, we'll come, stay for 2 or 3 days and talk about, Khatm-e Nabuwat. with PTI, it was, we'll sit until, the government agrees to have a parliamentary commission.
Right.
None of them said outright at the beginning that we are coming to, overthrow the government.
Okay.
I think this is the first dharna which is starting with the nuclear option. So, with those previous demands, with, governments which are pretending to be, democratic, which don't want to be seen to be, depriving people of the right to a democratic protest, they had to give an option, even if they were suspicious about what the real intentions of those parties were, given, that they at least subscribe to the ideals of democracy and protest, they had to give them an in. But now
Right.
here, I mean, this is different. You have a dharna which is starting with the
Threat of
aim
violence?
that we will overthrow the government,
Okay.
and we will stay here until we overthrow it. Nothing short from
Yeah,
that.
but here's the frustration.
Yeah.
As a resident of Islamabad, 4 times my and your lives were actually disrupted badly.
Badly disrupted.
So why is it that this city doesn't learn how to cope with such pressure?
I think it did learn to some extent in 2016, was it? After the Panama case erupted.
Yeah.
The PTI was trying to have a second dharna. And, I think the PMLN government was successful in holding back the Parvez Khatak caravan. They were able to beat them back and not allow them. And then, there was some sort of, negotiation and it finished. So, if they want to do it, and especially if it's coming from, KP side, there is a
Not
history.
essentially KP side, it can be from anywhere. The
Well,
problem
the Maulana
is,
strength is in KP, of course, it will be coming
no,
from there.
he might actually bring people from
But
other-
anyway, so there is some history. You can't say that it has always failed.
Yeah,
There is some
but
history.
afterwards something else happened. TLP happened,
Yeah.
and that was virtually unstoppable.
Yeah.
It created a lot of problems. Sir, your take, sir? Especially fear of violence, and are they going to come and disrupt life here?
I would like to start saying that democracy does not mean giving a carte blanche to every political force
Yeah.
to disrupt the normal life of a
Yeah.
country, of a city.
You're
as
free,
as
but
you said.
your freedom ends where my nose starts.
Absolutely. I think, but there are bad precedents have been set in the past as well, and you really can't stop Maulana to emulate the past practices. You mentioned 3 dharnas, and the city was locked down by PTI and the other political party. And I think we have been working in Islamabad, and the way the hardships we felt during those days, I really can't forget that. So I think it's a deja vu, and the PTI should understand that they set an example, and maybe they had justified demands as well. And as Murtaza Sahab said,
Actually,
they
Maulana-
didn't go ballistic, and they didn't go for the ultimate.
Actually, Tahirul Qadri started this fashion.
Exactly.
Before that, nobody else was doing it, right?
And
Tahirul Qadri.
Ehtizaz Hasan came. Ehtizaz
As a
Hasan.
lesson, yes.
Yeah, but that was like they used to come, march here, protest, and go back in a single day. But they
for-
came and sat.
Yes, yes.
Tahirul Qadri, not
Yes,
PTI.
absolutely. But when PTI and
Again, Tahirul Qadri.
Tahirul Qadri, they sat together, and we do remember everything, what really happened to the city and the people, and how we used to reach our offices, etc. And now I think the problem, Farah, is that government doesn't have any strategy to deal with this particular march.
You're
Marches
talking
and
about
protests.
local government?
No, I'm talking about the federal government, because you really can't leave people at the mercy of disruptive forces, and then you just wash your hands and you
No,
say
but
that.
is
well,
it responsibility of the federal government?
it is the responsibility of, primarily is the responsibility of the federal government, because he is coming to Islamabad. So
Islamabad is a city, it has local management, local government. They are supposed to take care of all these things.
I think direction should come from the top, and
Police
if it
is
doesn't
under
come,
federal
police, the Ministry of Interior and the Rangers, etc., they're all at the disposal of the Interior Ministry. Why Maulana is being allowed to come to Islamabad? Even last time when we were discussing, but Faraq, the problem is even a couple of thousand people, if they are brought to Islamabad, they can paralyze the city. Let alone you talk about 20,000 or 50,000 or more than that figure. And secondly, government should be engaging with Maulana politically as well. I don't see that happening on the ground. the different voices coming from the government, ministers, conflicting type of statements coming.
Yeah.
And I think this is
but
really
a
complicating the issue.
And a lot of fake news as well.
And the fake news as well. So
Yeah.
I think there are myriads of problems as far as the situation is concerned. So in my personal opinion, Maulana should be allowed to raise his voice, but not the way he wants. And secondly,
He
a
should be allowed
legitimate.
to arrive here and disrupt
I don't
our
think
lives.
so. I don't think so. He should be allowed to reach Islamabad. Why?
Where
Because
should he go then?
you can designate a place, maybe the parade ground or something like that. I think we need to set certain rules. If you keep on doing
The problem
that,
with parade ground is that these people say once you ask us to sit there, nobody notices us.
that is the problem, and that is the problem.
So
But
there
my
won't be
issue,
a concern till the time they are not going to disrupt your and our lives.
Farooq, my issue is any jatha, any number of people could challenge a legitimate government and a legitimately elected government, and they say that they would like to overthrow it. This is sedition. I think nobody is talking about that because they have got no justification.
We have a legal expert here. Let us ask him. Is it sedition that somebody wants to, somebody states, Barrister Saab, that I want to overthrow the government?
To an extent, it does come within the definition of sedition, but then you have to see the actions as well. It's just a mere expression of intention when you make a statement. But if you are taking certain positive steps towards achieving that in reality or in real practice, then yes, it amounts to, provided you take certain steps.
Okay.
And those certain steps would include marching on Islamabad and then disrupting the general public life. That would amount to some, yes, but.
And plans of violence? Plans of use of
Yes,
violence?
when you use violence, then you can be charged with various other offences, including some of the provisions of Anti-Terrorism Act as well. But sedition basically is conspiracy and conspiring to take certain,
government.
not just government, but also the established norms in a political polity.
Right.
But having said that, I mean, this is not a legal question. Let's not waste our time discussing the legalities of his statement and his plans. It's basically a political issue, which can be managed politically. This is my understanding.
Right. But we are not merely talking about legality of his action, because we have to actually look at the legality of counteraction as well.
Yes,
And
both
that's
these
why-
things.
that's
Both
why
these
one is
things.
asking
Both
these
both of these facets go hand in hand. But you see, insofar as stopping him is concerned, or blocking Islamabad, blocking his passage into Islamabad is concerned, these are all matters relating to the administrative dimension of this particular problem, as to how to handle him, whether to stop him outside Islamabad, within the domain or on the territory of the provinces. There are two provinces touching Islamabad, KP and Punjab. You can block him on the provincial side and not allow him to enter Islamabad. That would be one way of looking at it. So the issue would remain within the jurisdiction of the respective provinces. But if you allow him, that another strategy could be to allow him, and as Mr. Jadoon has pointed out, to confine him to this parade ground, where he just may bring 1 million people and just let them stay and give them facilities as well.
And they're going to
Provide them
sit
water.
there.
Yeah, they sit there. That
Media
is what
would broadcast their speeches.
I believe media would. Media would still go there and cover them and all, give them coverage, but then that is not his sole objective. His objective is indeed to highlight his plans, but it is also to give a signal and give an impression as well that he means what he said. Number one. Number two is that, of course, he has a lot of resentment, which he has expressed time and again against the present government, but the present government must focus on handling this issue by managing it politically, rather than planning the administrative action, which I also agree that there should be a strategy to handle it, and it should not be just left, just on the basis of assumptions and on just guesswork. Yes,
Right.
the administration of Islamabad must take steps. Provincial governments must be alerted to his march.
It is a provincial subject or a local subject or federal
Of
subject?
course, no. It's basically a subject of law enforcement to that extent, right?
Okay. And
so
who takes care of that?
provinces are primarily responsible for law enforcement, because the police and the law and order situation is now been delegated to the
Islamabad
provinces.
doesn't have a province.
But Islamabad has an overarching jurisdiction over law enforcement as well. So of course it can ask the provinces to manage him legally and in a certain way. But having said that, keep in mind, Patafi Saab, one very important point, that here he's coming basically to Islamabad to highlight his political agenda and to gain political marks.
Right.
Now, any kind of violence,
And who's
even
marking him?
the public of Pakistan.
Public of Pakistan.
That's
Nobody
what I
else.
think. That's what he's overtly trying to project himself as a leader of the aspirations of people who are against this particular government but have no other way to remove them. So this is what he's saying. However, even one tear gas fired at the procession would give him that political advantage. This is what he wants.
Right.
So use of force in any manner should be avoided to the maximum, and there should be political
They should be
management
handled
of,
politically.
political management of situation.
Okay,
Like I'll just give you one example. You know, a few years ago, about 10 years ago, when President Musharraf was in power, Maulana Akram Awan from Chakwal, he wanted to, he actually announced, and he did bring a lot of people, thousands of his supporters, to march on Islamabad, but he was handled politically and he was stopped from coming here. Qazi Hussain Ahmad in 1996 had announced a dharna. It turned violent. In Rawalpindi, he was blocked from coming to Islamabad, but that had its ramifications and negative effects for the government at that time. And then later, a couple of months later, Benazir Bhutto was government was dissolved by Mr. Farooq Laghari. So remember that these things, any kind of violence, even at a very minor, small scale, it plays into the hands of the agitators, and it goes against the interest of the government in
And
power.
do you foresee that agitators might try to use force
If I am-
or violence as
If
well?
I am one of the agitators or the planners, I would definitely love to have violence so that it is responded to by the government by use of force,
Okay.
and that's what I would be playing on.
Right. This is a serious question, Dr. Niaz Mirza, because in the past 4 instances that we have just mentioned, we haven't seen that kind of violence from the agitators, right? The people who were there, who wanted to protest, didn't resort to violence. But now there is a chance that they might. Do you see that possibility?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, this is the, most ambitious, the harshest, and the most emphatic aim that we've seen, in the previous several years, maybe decades, to, come to Islamabad with the explicit objective of, trying to overthrow the government. And I think, you have to have a multi-dimensional approach to it. The
Multi-layered
political
also.
side. There should be the political side, they should try to, negotiate with Maulana and stop making silly statements, which provoke him further. Handle it very quietly, give him
Can
some
you
respect.
qualify those silly statements?
Well, all kind of statements from these junior ministers, I don't want to repeat them. He's out of job. I was just looking at the ticker even here. So, treat him with a bit of respect. It doesn't harm you.
Short of
It
finances
might
and,
diffuse,
things like
the situation. Try that. Let the experienced hand deal with that. That said, I'm also sure that, Maulana Saab is also quite stubborn.
Yeah.
So, be clear of what you will offer him politically and whether he'll accept
There
that
might
or
be
not.
some kind of bargaining.
Bargaining, I mean, I don't know what the Maulana's game is. Is he looking for a small piece somewhere, or is
Piece
he
of
looking
action?
for the jugular vein? Does he really want to overthrow? But whatever his objective, the government should, seriously try to negotiate and try to find out what his real aims are and stop trying to, humiliate him further.
We have discussed already the possibility of violence, but why now? Why is he coming to Islamabad now, when the country is facing so many problems?
I think as far as Maulana Sahib is concerned, he believes that government is getting unpopular economic hardships, rising inflation,
And yet his
unemployment,
platform
etc.
is not economics.
Not economics.
He is
But
using
he
religion.
believes that by giving the call, the ultimate call to overthrow the government, people would line up behind him, and they would like to go to Islamabad, apart from whatever following he has. And
The
I think
opposition is not lining up. Who else will?
no, but for, as Barrister Saab said, any amount of violence would play into the hands of Maulana Sahib. I think any political campaigner would be aiming at that, at that
No, but
particular objective.
I'm talking about People's Party trying to wriggle out
That
of.
is that is the very
and
reason.
PMLN also.
Exactly. I think this is the very reason they are trying to distance themselves from this ongoing campaign, because
Even
they
their
believe
own
that
ally,
they could be,
Jamaat-e-Islami.
they could be violence, and they could be destabilizing kind of a violence. And if you destabilize the system, I think they would also be the losers, not the gainers. By pushing the government aside or by toppling the government, there are, you know that in Pakistani politics, everything is possible. And if you destabilize the system, I think they are the stakeholders. Maulana Sahib is not a stakeholder.
Okay.
PPP and PMLN and PTI, the three major political parties of Pakistan, are the major stakeholders of the system as well.
Leaders of the two
So I
of
think
those
they are
stakeholders
I
are
think
behind bars.
The paradox they're facing right now, they do not want to be seen to be adopting a strategy which is not an anti-government strategy. They wouldn't like to be aligned with the Maulana as well. I think this is the paradox. That is why they haven't come up very clearly what exactly do they want. Their political leadership is dithering on this particular issue, whether
But
they are going to
when-
be part of the agitation in Islamabad. Just a moral or political support
But
kind of a thing is.
there's another kind of appeal going out. PMLN asking Maulana to actually wait till middle of November. I don't know what
But
exactly
I-
does that
is-
signify. And then People's Party saying January.
Beyond
What are-
comprehension why they're
Yeah,
saying that.
why?
I mean, why are these particular cut-off
Milestones, yeah,
milestones?
yeah.
I think, I don't understand why they're saying that, except one reason, that they just want to delay it, and then maybe it might fizzle out and the storm goes away.
They don't want to topple the government.
I don't think so, because
People's
as
Party
I said,
wouldn't like to.
no, they wouldn't like to do that.
PMLN wouldn't.
But they wouldn't like to do that, because this is how you are going to destabilize the whole system. And knowing the dynamics and the
Just to
the pressures
qualify-
of the any political government in Islamabad, if the
Just to
government is not
qualify the
delivering,
point that you said, they don't want to destabilize the system. What does that mean?
as I said, they are the stakeholders. They are the
Okay.
major stakeholders in
Right,
the system.
right.
They would like to give a tough time to the government, but they would like the government to be in power. They believe that government is not delivering. And if they don't deliver in another couple of years, they believe that the process of coming down on
Okay.
their own weight, I think this is they
You-
would like to see.
you-
Wait and see. And then they
You
believe
very
that
effectively and very smartly pivoted away from my question. But I'm going to come back and I'm going to ask you, Barrister Saif, your take on opposition's collective confusion, their lack of commitment to Maulana Fazlur Rahman's cause. Do these political parties don't want to actually overthrow the government? They don't want to bring down the government, or they don't want to bolster Maulana Fazlur Rahman?
Patavi Sahab, I would kind of slightly differ with the term that you used, collective confusion. I would call it collective lack of their collective commitment.
Okay.
They are not committed to him at the moment because, number one, why should they be? Number one, first of all, the argument I support Jadoon Saab's argument that yes, they are stakeholders in the system. So why should they topple something in which they are also deriving some kind of benefit from it? Second,
Right. People's Party especially, since.
yeah, all the big parties who are being represented somehow in the parliament, number one. Number two is that insofar as agitational politics is concerned, I personally think that every political party in Pakistan, all the big names, they have the strength to at least gather 20 to 20,000, 25,000 workers in Islamabad or anywhere in the country if they really invest, and if they utilize their organizational capacity to deliver on this particular task. Number one. In particular religious parties, Jamaat Islami has the strength, Jamiat Ulama Islam has the strength. They can bring
Supporters,
between 20 to 30,000
followers,
people. Yeah, they can bring them. They have the committed cadres for that kind of volunteer force that they can bring them. Number one.
PMLN doesn't have that.
I believe
People's
PML also,
Party-
no, I believe People's Party and PML also have strengths in different parts of their, different
Country,
pockets. Yeah.
yeah.
But these religious parties, I mean, Maulana Fazlur Rahman can have a big gathering of his activists and workers anywhere in the country, because all you have to do is just shift them from one place to another. Like Tahir al-Qadri Sahib did. Tahir al-Qadri Sahib is not in a position to win a single seat.
Yeah.
His voter strength is weak, but his activist strength is very good, his worker strength. So Maulana Sahib is capitalizing on his worker strength, as any other religious party would have done. However, now he is in a position to come to Islamabad. For instance, he comes. Why should People's Party bring its 5,000 or 10,000 workers to join him? It would not make a significant difference to the for achieving the objective, basically, right? So they are there. They are supporting him. They are keeping their horses inside the stables. So resting them for maybe some other next opportunity. But they are letting him come. If he wins, it's a win-win situation for them.
Right.
If he loses, it's also
But
good for them.
joint opposition seems to be struggling.
But at the
these
same
days.
time, they are happy if Maulana Sahib comes to Islamabad and gives a good shake up to the government, right?
No, but both Bilawal
Yeah.
and Shehbaz Sharif have
And without
actually
taking
tried
the
to
blame as
dissuade.
well. Yes, yes.
No, but he tried to dissuade them. Both of them tried to
Yes,
dissuade him.
yes. That
Why?
could be some
Just to
kind of
gain
a-
points?
No, I don't
Marking
think it's
system?
just gaining point, but it's kind of a respectable way to wriggle out of making a commitment with him, because he's part of their opposition as well. So it's a decent way and a respectful way of telling him that, okay, we are with you, but wait for another 2 months. Now those 2 months might not have any significance. They may not have a political objective or a design to wait for 2 more months or 3 more months, but it's just to gain some time and to kind of tell him that, okay, if you want to do it on your own. And I think it's a end. If I'm in the shoes of Bilawal Bhutto, or if I'm in the shoes of Shehbaz Sharif, and I want to kind of support him, but at the same time not be part of his campaign, I
Right.
would do the same. I'll just go
And
to him and
who's
say,
going to-
Maulana Sahib, we are with you. Please go ahead. But if you could wait for a couple of months, then it would be
Here's
better.
another question. When you look at PTI or Tahir al-Qadri for that matter, or even TLP, they usually have a vast number of rich supporters.
Yeah.
And they have some kind of finances as well,
True.
right? So they could manage to come here and sit here for quite some time. Logistics are needed.
Yeah.
Maulana Fazlur Rahman's party doesn't seem to be very rich when it comes to finances. So who's going to finance it?
I think that finances in any political movements, my experience personally is that financial considerations are always secondary considerations.
Right.
All you have to do is just have a few committed people to come with you. Like, you see, we are always underestimating these religious parties. Remember, they are actually, they have been designed on the lines of and the model of old communist parties. They have a very strong network. Their workers are committed. You may consider them stupid or fools, but they are not.
Nobody does.
They're not. They are committed. And you may call them extremists, you may call them radicalized, whatever. But he has the potential, and even Jamaat Islami, and even TLP showed it.
Jamaat-e-Islami has a central treasury. Maulana Fazlur Rahman's party
Maulana
doesn't.
Fazlur Rahman has supporters.
And you said that his followers, those who will come as his followers, in the garb of followers, are actually his students, right? They might
Mostly,
actually
yeah.
come and sit here.
Yeah.
So they are not very rich people.
But they don't need those kind of riches to make this.
You'll need a vehicle
agitation.
to start with. You'll need
All
some kind
those
of
things.
fuel,
You
and
see,
then food,
let me-
and staying here.
Let me, Patabi Saab, because I've been part of these political agitations all my student life, I've spent my youth in these things. So I have my personal observation is that financial considerations should be taken as secondary consideration. Money starts pouring in somehow. You see, you ask for donations, people come forward and they support you. He may have contacted, how do we know? There may be lots of businessmen who are really upset with the present government, and they may want to give them a good shake, and they might have told him, okay, go ahead, we will sponsor you.
Businessmen
But we don't
might
know.
actually sponsor Maulana Fazlur Rahman.
Why not? If they could sponsor
Remember,
TLP,
there is-
if they could sponsor Rizvi, Talib, what's
No,
his name,
no.
Khadim Hussain Rizvi,
Okay.
why would not they?
No, but
they
there's
not,
always a risk of such a putsch actually getting successful.
Yeah.
Then Maulana Fazlur Rahman becomes the, Amir al-Mu'mineen, and if he is Amir al-Mu'mineen,
I don't
he's
think
not
that
going
he's
to be
going to be-
No,
pro-business.
they know that.
I mean,
That's a very far-fetched idea.
but this is what I'm saying.
That's a far-fetched consideration.
Brinkmanship always has the fear, right?
Yeah.
And this is the problem. I mean, people don't see their own actions consequences.
Well, I think Maulana is well connected within Pakistan, outside Pakistan, arranging the money. I don't think will be the
Inside
problem for
Pakistan
him.
and where else?
Outside as well. I mean, in
His
Middle East, here
supporters
and there,
are
there's
different
no
places.
Middle
money will not be a
I thought you
problem.
were talking about local
No,
geography.
no, no. Money will not be a problem. I think, the basic issue with the opposition, they would love to get rid of this government, but, they don't think it's possible at this stage,
Right.
given, the equation between Pindi and Islamabad. They don't think it's possible to, overthrow this government
Okay.
at this stage, and then it will be, face losing. So I think that is the main reason, because, they are stakeholders, but, look at, the main stakeholder is PPP, because it has, the
provincial
Sindh
government,
government.
yeah.
But then there is also the fact that under this government, it's facing so much accountability pressures, and then, it can hope that if this government goes, then, that pressure might go. So, of course it has a stake in terms, and then, it's also fearful that PTI might make inroads into, the smaller towns of Sindh. So definitely, the motivation is there, but the only thing is, they don't think it's possible to succeed at this stage, and maybe they're hoping that this government will make some big mistake, maybe the inflation might rise again,
Right.
so maybe
So
postpone
their
things.
2 months or 4 months waiting request
Yeah.
is essentially a bluff.
It's essentially a bluff which may get more delayed if
Maulana
nothing
Fazlur
tangible
Rahman
has
can call
happened.
it out?
Sorry.
Maulana Fazlur Rahman can call this bluff out?
Well, you see, the thing is, that he is just sitting right at the survival mode. He's practically lost all his political support. And, it's quite possible that next election he may not even get these 3 or 4 seats. So he has to do something drastic to stay relevant, to stay noticed, and to be seen as a nuisance power. Maybe he might get something in return through, negotiations. So I think he'll try. He's not just going to give up easily.
Yeah, but when you talk about PTI and Maulana Fazlur Rahman, their identities are so antithetically built
Yeah,
that
yeah.
one cannot survive while the
But
other lives.
other forces might
So you want
prevail
to
upon
add?
PTI,
Then I have to-
and
Yeah,
Yeah,
please.
please.
Yeah, please.
other forces might prevail on PTI to make some concession. That's
Right.
possible.
That-
I,
Barrister
I,
Saban.
I simply want to make one interjection here, and that is that Maulana Fazlur Rahman is not in a very bad position politically either.
Right.
I mean, if you look at the number of seats in the parliament, he's far better in number of seats than many other parties in Pakistan, right? In the National Assembly, he has quite a few seats. Then in the Provincial Assembly of KPK and Balochistan, he has a few seats. So he is well represented there. But in Pakistani politics, it is not your policy or your agenda which gives you a kind of a boost or a lift. It's your nuisance value which makes you marketable in
Right,
Pakistani politics.
right.
And I think he feels that this is the right time to show his nuisance, to express his nuisance, and to make sure that his nuisance is felt in the right circles.
Yeah.
It is noticed there, so that in future politics he remains relevant.
Yeah, but my concern, sir, is Javed Jadoon Sahab, that he had entire year to actually agitate. He didn't. Right when the country is facing Kashmir crisis, when it has many problems, many pressures, at that time Maulana decides to arrive here. Something seems to be awry. What exactly is that?
I think there's certain very critical questions which need to be answered and debated as well. Number one question is why this, as you also pointed out, why this particular time?
Right.
I mean, the selection of time when we do understand Pakistan is facing a lot of problems on domestic front and on the foreign front as well, India, Kashmir, Afghanistan. There are many pressures on Pakistan and two borders as well. So it's a very strange kind of a move at this particular juncture. Secondly, what are his political objectives? He is not in a position to overthrow the government, this is for sure. He can give a tough time to the government in Islamabad, maybe agitate for a couple of weeks, and then, we as the political analysts, we understand that the movements, the moment they keep going, they start fizzling out as well.
Okay.
You really can't keep the momentum, and if you can't keep the momentum, then I think it is the kind of reverse action for that particular political party as well.
You're talking about a man who has been head of Kashmir Committee for a long time. And now, right when Kashmir crisis is on, and we have seen what is going on in Indian occupied Kashmir, that man decides to come to Islamabad.
The mind-boggling, as Murtaza Sahab pointed out, he has gone for the ultimate. He
Yeah.
has gone for the jugular. He has gone for the kill. And I think this is something not happening on the ground. He is not in a position to topple a government, elected government, democratically elected government, which is not suppressive, which is not taking away the people's liberties. Economic issues, etc. You can, but he's not even talking about the economic situation in Pakistan.
Again, going back to the identities or identity clash between JUIF or Maulana Fazlur Rahman and PTI's leadership, what exactly is it that keeps them, at loggerheads? Instead of actually working together, there was a time when PTI was ready to work with MMA. But somehow it seems that both Maulana Fazlur Rahman and Imran Khan Sahib, Prime Minister of Pakistan, are wary of each other. Why would that be?
I think even Maulana Sahib, when he was asked after the, I think before the elections, just before the elections, that is there any possibility that your party could form a kind of a coalition with the ruling PTI? He said he didn't rule out any kind of alliance with PTI.
Okay.
So I think politics is art of possible. And Maulana Sahib, right now, I think he believes that because of the difficulties government is facing right now, he has the opportunity, which he doesn't. Secondly, I think government is also making a lot of blunders. They should, I think, they should engage Maulana Sahib and tell him.
How?
I mean, there are different tiers. Faraq, if you,
You
want
have
to
used
engage,
that man as a symbol of corruption in this country, repeatedly talking about him, right? Now that man is coming here, and you're talking about engaging him. How will you?
but I think the more responsibility lies
I
on the
mean,
government, on the
then
sitting
you
government.
compromise your image of
You know,
this anti-corruption
Faraq,
crusader.
why I say they should engage. Number one, if there's a problem in Islamabad, you are going to divert your attention from all the domestic challenges towards Maulana Saab's campaign in Islamabad.
Okay.
You are not going to give enough time to the to correcting the economy, to addressing the Kashmir
So
issue.
to govern is to compromise.
Definitely, Farah, I
Then-
think
then you lose
need
your
to
moral
compromise
edge.
because there should be a difference between the opposition and the ruling party. PTI needs to come out of that mode, the mode of opposition. Being in government, I think you need to be flexible as well. You need to talk to him. You talk him out. That, well, what are your demands? Why you are going for this ultimate objective of toppling the government?
You say, what is your demand? I say, okay, quit. What are you going to do?
Faraq, I think you keep engaging. There is so much of a time in between. 27th of October is far away a date. Even something happen now, you can involve even certain religious scholars as well. I mean, it is all should be part of the strategy.
There is not
the
a
government should
single-
know what they can do.
There is not a single religious scholar that Maulana Fazlur Rahman will listen to because he thinks that he is the ultimate scholar, and that becomes a problem.
But even then, Faraq, I strongly believe that government
Yeah.
should not give up
You know-
on engaging Maulana Sahib.
Yes, sir. You
Should not
want to
give
say
up.
something?
Yeah, I'm saying that, again, this multi-pronged strategy that we need to develop, I agree, the chances of success politically are very, very low.
No
But,
matter.
the government still has to show that, it tried its best, and when you're talking behind closed door, his demands may be quite different. There's a small chance of that. And then, the second option should be, to look at, the administrative strength, that if political negotiations fail, I think the next step should be to try to stop him from coming to Islamabad itself, even if there is, some violence, etc. It's better that it happens outside of Islamabad, somewhere on the road to Peshawar or whatever. But, I think the government has the legal and the moral right to try to stop him from coming into Islamabad, just given the harsh nature of the demands and the aims that he has expressed. This dharna is very different from, the Labbaik dharna or the PTI.
Not different from Labbaik Dharna. They were
They were
also,
not looking to overthrow the government.
They were demanding that.
No. They were asking for a minister's resignation.
No, they later on asked for that.
Later on.
Initially, they said we are going to go there and overthrow the government.
But in any case, then, if somebody is talking about overthrowing the government, the legal and the moral right to stop them from entering the
Yeah.
capital exists.
Is
And
on
I
the
think
government.
that should be a strategy number 2 rather
Right.
than letting them into Islamabad.
Right, but one has to have strategies because people of this kind will continue to come in. And the problem then becomes, Barrister Saab, that Today, Maulana Fazlur Rahman is there. Tomorrow, somebody very aggressive or violent comes in. Remember TLP days, and there were times when we thought that there could be a large-scale violence. At that time, then repeatedly, one has to surrender or compromise. That doesn't seem good. I mean, the government, whether you agree with it or not, people have elected it. And anybody who's not elected by the people has no right to actually challenge the government outside the domain of democracy. Won't you agree?
I would agree with your thesis theoretically, but in realpolitik, the problem is that you are supposed to be, and you are expected, and you should be expecting to be confronted with challenges of all kinds. Unexpected challenges, expected challenges, challenges brought about by your own mistakes, challenges engineered by conspiracies, things like that. So these are all the challenges that you have to be mentally prepared for. But the real issue is the brinkmanship in statecraft. That is what matters in the end. And I personally think that Prime Minister Imran Khan Sahab is in a position now where he can still make a difference, because all the legislative, all the constitutional powers, all the executive powers are in his hands. I think that there is still room for maneuvering and for managing this position, this problem, this particular problem, because it might not be a very serious major threat for him or for his government, but it is a nuisance. And why to add another nuisance on your plate when you already have lots of problems on your plate?
Your plate is already full.
Yeah, so it is better to negotiate.
And secondly, one shouldn't underestimate the opponent. You
And
don't know what
no,
exactly is coming.
that is politically suicidal to underestimate your opponent.
Right.
You must give him his whatever recognition he has. You have to recognize that, his strengths and all that, and you must never let go of negotiation and mediation. There should be people in between you and him who should be trying to
Yeah, but that
resolve the
actually,
issue.
that sort of changes the identity of who you are, or your political identity. Realpolitik is important, but even in terms of realpolitik, you end up compromising your own base. Voter tomorrow is going to say, look, we voted for you, and then you are cutting deals with people. That is not welcome, right? Your conclusion, sir, very quick.
I think for a country is more important than any other consideration. At this particular juncture, interests of the state, interests of the nation should be supreme, and
Yeah,
these
but
interests
people's
call
mandate
for.
is important also.
It is, but people's mandate is to deliver as well.
Yeah.
I think this is the primary and the basic mandate of the people.
Right.
And without peace, without tranquility, without uninterrupted democratic journey towards the ultimate objectives, you can't deliver.
You
and
can't
for
deliver.
that particular objective, even if you have to make compromises, I think it's
One
worth it.
liner
Yeah,
conclusion.
negotiate, if for nothing else, just to improve your moral standing.
Okay.
So later on, if something happens, you can
Optics.
say that we tried our best.
Right, Barrister Sahab, your conclusion.
Well, I believe that negotiating with your opponent, with your political opponent, does not amount to compromising on your principles.
Right.
You can negotiate even with the enemy with whom you are in actual, waging a war against you. So therefore, I don't think it is the case. The present government would not be compromising on their stance on corruption, because they're not letting him off the hook if there are any cases against him, or if
Right.
there is an investigation pending against
Yeah,
him.
but that,
No such thing.
That
Yeah.
would be the negotiation issue.
No, but
Is
I
it-
don't think that there is any major issue on the plate at the moment, as we know.
Okay, right, sir. On that positive note, I'm told that we have to conclude the program. Barrister Mohammed Ali Sahab, thank you very much for being part of the program. Dr. Niaz Mirza, always a pleasure having you here. Same goes for you, Javed Jazoon Sahab. Thank you very much for being a part of the program. Viewers, you have listened to our participants. This discussion, of course, will continue till Maulana Fazlur Rahman decides to arrive in Islamabad or decides not to. But here is the thing. When political parties fight, they sort of forget that country has very tumultuous times. It is facing many challenges on its borders, elsewhere as well. It is time for the political parties and their followers to remind their leadership that you shouldn't be going for brinkmanship. This was today's program. Thank you very much for watching us. Take care.